You know, technology has shoved hopefully Facebook will respond for the first part of the show intro, which they might. Welcome to another edition of Student Body Right. I'm your host, Mr. Ryan Neff. We talk about all things college football. Again, you can see the banner in the background. I don't know why it has the red around Student Body Right. It won't let me put up certain stuff like it did last week. So, again, red hot poker. Hopefully, Jason Staples will join me. He covers North Carolina football. He was unable to come on Thursday for my college football preview special. And I get it. Writers and everybody's busy, and I get it. So, and again, I'd like to wish my birthday a happy birthday. She is years old. If anybody can, I've had a migraine headache all day, which is unusual for me. Usually, if I take Motrin, it takes the headache away, and it's not working. It's not a tumor. But if anybody could suggest anything else, that would be fantastic. It's not a brutal migraine, but it's just like that little achy, like in the back of your head in like certain spots, and it just like stays there and it won't go away. But anywho, as I did in the previous hour, going to go over week 0. The big game of the weekend was number 22 Iowa State and number 17 Kansas State squaring off in a Big 12 showdown. I thought it was a good game. I don't like the fact that it's in Dublin because it's no teams have ties to Dublin. I said this in the last hour. People in Dublin, they don't give a shit about college football. If they're going to be playing a college football game in London or Germany, they don't care. They could give a shit less. It's just like a little end of the summer mini vacation for the parents and the boosters to go over there and drink a shitload of Guinness and Jameson. Well, the Jameson's an Irish whiskey. That's all it is. People in Dublin, they care about soccer. They care about rugby. They don't give a shit about it. They don't care. Period. Really, the difference in the game for me was the fact that Iowa State was 3 of 3 on 4th down, and Kansas State was 1 of 4 on 4th down. Kansas State was down 24-21. There was still like 7-8 minutes left in the game. Kansas State decides to go for it on 4th down. I think it was like their 40-yard line, their own 40-yard line. Stupid. Just punt the ball. Your defense was playing okay. If you get a stop, you march down the field, you kick a field goal, it's tied, you're going overtime. But no. Nope. Both quarterbacks were fantastic, by the way. Though I will say this about Avery Johnson for Kansas State. He really needs to improve his accuracy on his balls. When he's throwing the football. He has a little problem with accuracy. But if we go to the box score, Rocco Beck, the quarterback for Iowa State, he was 14 of 28, 183, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Carson Hansen was the main rusher for Iowa State, 16 carries, 71 yards. Brett Eccleston, 3 catches, 46 yards and a touchdown. And Dominic Overby caught a touchdown pass. There were turnovers in the game, but that's to be expected. Rocco Beck lost the fumble, and so did Abu Sama III. Leading tackler for Iowa State was Marcus Neal Jr. Kansas State, Avery Johnson, 21 of 30, 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Joe Jackson, the main rusher, 12 carries, 51 yards. Avery Johnson added a rushing touchdown. Jace Brown for Kansas State was the leading receiver, 4 catches, 78 yards and a touch. Jerron Bradley, also a good showing, 3 catches, 75 yards and a touchdown. Kansas State fumbled it twice, lost both. Kansas State's defense, the leading tacklers, there were 3 of them with 8 total tackles. Donovan McIntosh, Zayshawn Rich, and Austin Romaine. If we go to the team stats, like I said, the difference to me for the game was Iowa State was 3 of 3 on 4th down, and Kansas State was 1 of 4. Kansas State outgained Iowa State. Both turnovers, 2 for Kansas State, 2 to Iowa State, sort of equaled out. But again, and Iowa State only had 1 penalty for 5 yards, and they sort of are always on the list of least penalized teams across the country. Again, great play. The game was fantastic. Iowa State ran the ball 46 times to Kansas State's 27. A little bit more clock control. Iowa State held the ball for almost 34 minutes. Kansas State a little over 26. So a little bit of ball control, rushing the ball a little bit more effectively. But, when you're 1 of 4 on 4th down, you're not going to win many football games. Kansas State was just a tad better on 3rd down efficiency. Not much. So, where does Kansas State go from here? You're in a little bit of a hole just to start the season. You're already looking up at Ohio State in the Big 12, but it's early. I picked Kansas State to win the Big 12. Believe me, all kinds of hell is going to go down in the Big 12 this year. So you could have someone win that division with a 9-3 record. We'll see. The other games on the slate over the weekend. UNLV, which was a 30-point favorite at home against Idaho State, were lucky to win that game. Idaho State had their number for most of the game. But UNLV comes back and wins 38-31. Dan Mullen's first victory as UNLV coach, but they need to play better. Especially against an FCS squad. UNLV's pass defense was atrocious that game. Horrible. Terrible. They need to shore that up. I picked UNLV as the 12 seed in the playoff. I thought with no Ashton Genty at Boise State, a little bit of turnover there at Boise State, I thought UNLV coming in would sort of supplant them, at least for this year. Not so sure anymore. It's only one game, though. We go to the team stats. Jordan Cook, for Idaho State, have yourself a day in yardage-wise. He was 30 of 50, 380 yards, a touchdown, but he threw 3 interceptions, which was big because that's sort of what kept UNLV in the game. Dason Brooks for Idaho State, 18 carries, 132, and 2 touchdowns. Ian Duarte, 6 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown. Damian Morgan had 7 catches for Idaho State. Idaho State's leading tackler was Taylor Tuioti with 13 total tackles. On the flip side of the equation, UNLV passing the ball, Anthony Colandrea was 15 to 21, 195, a touchdown, no picks. Jaden Thomas, the big rusher for UNLV, 10 carries, 147 yards, 3 touchdowns. UNLV receiving, Jaden Bradley, 6 carries, 131 yards. Jake Pope, UNLV's leading tackler. Team stats. Both teams were penalized a lot. Idaho State 10 for 80 yards, UNLV 8 for 90. Idaho State turned it over 4 times, UNLV once. Kind of kept UNLV in the game. UNLV rushed for 307 yards. Idaho State rushed for 160. Passing yardage, you had Idaho State with 395 and UNLV with 232. So Idaho State's run defense was putrid, and UNLV's pass defense was putrid. And again, when you're turning the ball over 4 times to the other team's 1, and you're keeping the other team in it, hence, that's why UNLV won a football game. Kansas beat the hell out of Fresno State. I thought it would be a closer football game. I chose Pole. Look, Kansas came to play. Fresno State didn't. We go to the stats. E.J. Warner for Fresno State passing the football, Kurt Warner's son. He was 18 of 29, 179, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. Fresno State couldn't run the ball worth a shit. 29 total carries for 37 yards. A little misleading because E.J. Warner was sacked for a loss of 23 yards. Justin Freeman for Fresno State. Sorry, Josiah Freeman, 3 catches, 43 yards. Leading tackler for Fresno State was Jaden Pearson with 12 total tackles. For Kansas, Jalen Daniels with a fantastic game, 18 to 20, 176 yards, 3 touchdowns. More importantly, no picks. Daniel Hishaw Jr., 13 carries, 69 yards, and LaShawn Williams, 6 for 57 and a touch. Kansas ran the ball 38 times for 207 yards and a touchdown. Cam Pickett, Kansas receiver, 6 catches, 77 yards, 2 touchdowns. Leading receiver was Trey Lathan, 8 total tackles. You go to the team stats. Again, Fresno State, 3 turnovers to Kansas's none. Again, Fresno State ran the ball for 37 yards, Kansas for 207. So when you're turning the ball over like that and you can't stop the run, you're going to get your ass kicked. So Kansas was a good opening win for them. Then the next game on the slate was Western Kentucky against Sam Houston, which turned out to be not so bad of a game. Back and forth for a little bit. Western Kentucky pulled away in the end. For Sam Houston, Hunter Watson passing, 19 of 30, 209 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. He was also their leading rusher, 14 carries, 91 yards and a touch. Leading receiver for Sam Houston was Elijah Green, 7 catches for 61 yards. Sam Houston defense, 2 players with 8 total tackles, Alonzo Edwards Jr. and C.J. Johnson. On the flip side of the coin, the Western Kentucky's, the Hilltoppers. Maverick McIver, have yourself a day, 33 of 51, 401 yards, 3 touchdowns. More importantly, no picks. Marvis Parrish, their leading rusher, 12 for 52. Matthew Henry for Western Kentucky receiving, have yourself a day. 7 catches, 148 yards, and a touchdown. Western Kentucky defensively, their leading tackle was Dave Herard with 6 total tackles. We go to the team stats. Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Houston was 2 of 14 on third down. Western Kentucky was 11 of 19. Sam Houston won the turnover battle. They only turned it over once to Western Kentucky's 2 times. But when you're only converting 2 of 14 on third down, and you're giving up 401 passing yards with no turnovers, you're going to lose the football game. That was a Conference USA matchup, by the way. So Western Kentucky on the board with their first Conference USA win of the year. I mean, the Kansas Fresno State game was that was out of conference for both. Final game on the slate on Saturday was Hawaii and Stanford. Hawaii coming up on top, 23-20. A lot of people wondering why Stanford didn't take a timeout late in the game. I was wondering the same thing myself. I don't know. I don't know what goes into coaches' decisions anymore. I can't answer it for you. I think the spread on this game was 3 or 2.5 or something like that. I don't remember. Well, if we go to the box score for this particular game for Stanford, the trees, Stanford Cardinal, they have a tree as their mascot. Ben Gulbranson was 15 of 30 for 109 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. Micah Ford, Stanford rusher, he had a good day, 26 carries, 113, a touchdown. Chico Holt and C.J. Williams were the leading receivers for Stanford, 36 yards and 30 yards respectively. Matt Rose, the leading tackler. Excuse me here for a second. He was the leading tackler, 13 total tackles. For Hawaii, Micah Alejado had a good day, 27 to 39, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Cam Barfield, 6 carries, 45 yards. Bofele Ashlock, 9 catches, 69 yards and a touch. Jackson Harris added a receiving touchdown. Leading tacklers were Peter Manuma and Jame Otis, 8 total tackles apiece. Close game throughout, to be honest with you. One of the better games of the day. Hawaii turned it over 3 times to Stanford's 1. Rushing the football, Stanford outrushed Hawaii 177 to 96. Passing wise, Hawaii won that battle. Stanford was 2 of 2 on fourth down. Hawaii was 0 of 1. Stanford was 8 of 17 on third down. Hawaii was 3 of 10, but Hawaii somehow won the football game. And again, Hawaii was up 23-20 late in the game. Stanford had the ball. They had a few timeouts. It was a weird ending to that football game, but Hawaii gets the game. Frank Reich, coach at Stanford, his first loss of his college football coaching career. Some news and notes from around the world in college football. South Carolina Gamecocks running back Rashul Faison has been granted an additional season of eligibility by the NCAA to play the season at the age of 25. He was with Utah State last year. What are you doing at 25? So running back in college football, well, for a college football team. The Michigan Wolverines will start true freshman Bryce Underwood at quarterback. Sherrone Moore said that he has earned the opportunity. He gives you the best chance to win, then he gives you the best chance to win. He's been a little cocky, to be quite honest with you, in fall camp. DJ Lagway will start the Gators season opener against Long Island University. He hasn't really done anything all camp because of the injury he sustained. He has had a calf strain. Calf strains are sort of a nagging injury, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. The Kentucky Wildcats have named transfer Zach Calzada as their starter for week 1. He's actually started 32 games in his career, and he's gone 23-9. So he has the experience. He started his career at Texas A&M. That was back in 2019 through 2021. 2022, he was at Auburn. And then for the last 2 years, he was with Incarnate Word. Incarnate Word. Hulu and North Carolina's Bill Belichick will be part of a Hulu program. This reported by the Associated Press. In a social media video posted by the program Sunday, Belichick told the players that streaming provider Hulu will feature the Tar Heels in what he described as a season-long show that will showcase our football program. It'll show our commitment to winning, he told players. It'll show our commitment to the team, and that's our priority. Yeah, let's have a TV show. Because that always works out. Okay. Whatever. Well, hopefully Jason Staples will be on. Unfortunately, I don't have my phone close. I hope. He might be on a little bit later. I haven't really seen anything that would warn him not coming on. But again, writers for teams at this point of the year are extremely busy. So let us go to the schedule for this week in top 25 action. This Thursday, this will be at 5:30 p.m. down there in Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. Number 25, Boise State is at South Florida. You can get tickets as low as $32, by the way. This is a tricky game. Boise State, the favorite to win the Mountain West Conference again, and South Florida, a dark horse to maybe win the American Conference this year. It's a toughie. It's at 5:30. It's more like a 2:30 game for Boise. This game will be on ESPN, by the way. Um, uh, Ed's telling me South Florida, but the analyst guy in me is telling me to take Boise State. I go back. I've got to go back and forth on this one, to be quite honest with you. Boise State's favored by 6.5. I think South Florida will be a lot better than they've been the last couple of years. But the heat could be a factor as well. Game time temperature will be 89 degrees down there at Raymond James. I think South Florida keeps it close, but I think Boise State will find a way. So I'll go Boise State 31, South Florida 24. This is all top 25 action. Excuse me. On Friday at 7:30 p.m. on the Peacock, out there in Champaign, Illinois. Western Illinois takes on number 12, Illinois. Illinois is favored by 45.5. This is blowout city written all over it. I will go Illinois 49, and Western Illinois may not score 49-0. Then we will go to Saturday. I'll save the big one for last. At 12, Syracuse plays the Tennessees. That will be in Atlanta, Georgia. Tennessee's favored by 13.5. Syracuse had a good year last year. Tennessee might be retooling a little bit. Again, you don't know what you're getting the first week of the season, but I'll go Tennessee 34, Syracuse 20. 2:30 p.m. on FS1. The Old Dominions will be playing number 20, Indiana, there in Bloomington. Indiana is a 24-point favorite, my friends. Again, we don't know what we're getting. These are just guesses at this point. Indiana 40, Old Dominion 10. At 3:30, Nevada is at number 2, Penn State. Penn State favored by 44. Nevada's fallen on some hard times lately. Every time I pick Penn State with a huge spread, they never cover. Well, I'll go Penn State 45, Nevada 7. 3:30 p.m. Marshall is at number 5, Georgia, between the hedges down there in Sanford Stadium in Athens. Georgia's favored by 39.5. We all know what happened last year. Georgia had their head up their asses for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. I don't think that happens this time. Georgia 49, Marshall 7. 3:30 p.m. on ABC. Number 8, Alabama travels to Florida State in Tallahassee to take on the Seminoles. Alabama's favored by 13.5. I would still need to see it out of Florida State to see how they bounce back. Alabama 38, Florida State. I'll go 17. Iowa State, number 22, Iowa State. They are hosting South Dakota in Ames. 14.5 point favorite. You have to worry about a letdown here. I don't think it happens. Iowa State 37, South Dakota 20. At 4 p.m. on the Big Ten Network, Montana State at number 7, Oregon. Montana State, a good FCS team. Oregon's favored by 29.5. I'll go Oregon 42, Montana State 14. 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus and SEC Network Plus. Oklahoma, number 18 Oklahoma, will host Illinois State. Oklahoma favored by 35. If you can't blow Illinois State out, I still need to see out of Oklahoma. But I'll go Oklahoma 49, Illinois State nothing. 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus and the SEC and Network Plus. Number 15 ranked Florida Gators. My Florida Gators take on Long Island University. There's no spread on the game. Florida should beat them in a submission. I'll go Florida 48, Long Island University. I'll go 7. At 7 p.m., North Dakota is at number 17, Kansas State. This is on ESPN Plus. Kansas State, 25.5 point favorite. Again, how's Kansas State going to respond? North Dakota, a good FCS team. I don't know if they'll cover. Kansas State, 38, North Dakota, 17. 7 p.m. on ESPN, we've got number 19, Texas A&M hosting Texas San Antonio. A&M favored by 24.5. Texas San Antonio, a decent team, but I'll go Texas A&M 44, Texas San Antonio 21. 7:30 p.m. on NBC Peacock. Number 14, Michigan hosts New Mexico. Michigan's favored by 35. New Mexico falling on some hard times here lately. I'll go Michigan 44, New Mexico 3. 7:30 p.m. Arkansas Pine Bluff at number 23 Texas Tech. There is no spread on the game. This is going to be a joke. Texas Tech 51, Arkansas Pine Bluff 7. 7:45 p.m. on the SEC Network. Georgia State at number 21 Ole Miss. Georgia State, a sneaky decent team. Ole Miss favored by 36. Kind of a big spread for Ole Miss. I'll go Ole Miss 40, Georgia State 10. 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. on the ACC Network. No spread on this game. East Texas A&M against number 16 SMU. SMU 41, East Texas A&M nothing. 10 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Northern Arizona is at number 11 Arizona State. Arizona State favored by 28.5. I will go Arizona State 40, Northern Arizona 7. On Sunday, 3 p.m., Virginia Tech is at number 13 South Carolina. South Carolina favored by 8. Can Virginia Tech stop Lenora Sellers? I don't think so. I'll go South Carolina 30, Virginia Tech 20. The big game on Monday night, number 6 Notre Dame at number 10 Miami. Spread's 2.5. I think it'll be a close game throughout. I'll go Notre Dame 27, Miami 24. And then the two real big games of the weekend, other than that one. 7:30 p.m. on ABC, number 9 LSU and number 4 Clemson in Memorial State. Clemson favored by 4. Battle of the Death Valleys, Battle of the Tigers. Everyone's hyping up Clemson. I think them being ranked 4th is too high. I think LSU is probably where they should be. It's a tough game. I'm going to go Clemson 26, LSU 24. And now the big game of the weekend. You got numero uno Texas at numero 3 Ohio State in Ohio Stadium. 12 p.m. on Fox. I will say this. Texas has their quarterback. Ohio State still needs to find out about their quarterback. I will go Texas 30, Ohio State 24. You heard it here first. Texas 30, Ohio State 24. I see him. He just popped into the green room. Everybody that knows me, anybody that covers a certain college team, we have to bring him on in fashion. So whenever the band wants to kick. Yes, Tar Heel, lights on. Don't ask me. I mean, I've got the powder blue headphones on. That was not my intention. But let's bring him on. That would be Mr. Jason Staples. You know him as Doc Staples. Doc, thanks for coming on, my friend.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome. Oh, I was just talking about it a few minutes ago. What's up with this Hulu streaming show that's going to be in depth about the North Carolina program? What do we know?
You would have to ask the president of your universe about that one. I really am about as in the dark as you are on how that goes, and that's going to have to be you'll have to get the interview with Miss Hudson to find out exactly what the details of that are. I'm sure.
I just read some of the quotes from Bill Belichick about he told his players about it, and I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. Have a show about the program week in and week out. So,
I mean, it's probably not going to be bad for recruiting especially if they are going to have a successful season at all.
True.
You know, exposure is good for the most part in these days, as long as you're not falling apart. I mean, I would say that's not the sort of insider look at a program that you would have wanted, say, in Tallahassee, Florida last year. Right.
Mm,
That's not going to be a good look. You don't want the insider thing if that's going to be how your season goes. But if you're going to have
right.
a decent season, then having the opportunity to give people an inside look might help you in recruiting and might help you, in terms of national brand and further on. So I'm sure that's a big part of the calculus there. Would have been nice if it had been NFL Films, though.
Yeah, instead of Hulu. But what are you going to do? So where are we now? Now fall camps are basically over. Look, from what I'm seeing here, Gio Lopez is going to be the starting quarterback. Davion Gauss is the running back. Talk to me about the depth North Carolina possesses heading into the season.
Well, it depends on the position to a large measure. I think there's some positions on this team where they feel like they've got four guys who are ACC level or better players in terms of some NFL potential and other things. I think running back is one of those positions. I think Benjamin Hall, the transfer from Michigan, has been somebody that they have
Mhm.
been really pleased with based on the intel that we've gotten. They've been really happy with what they've gotten from Hall, and he's a 230-pound back with some bursts that showed on film, but he's just never really been able to put it all together yet. Didn't have as big of an opportunity at Michigan. Michigan had some deep backfields, and I think he's going to have more opportunities at Carolina. And they really like what they've seen from him. Gauss, I think we already kind of have a sense of what he can be based on last year, and he's basically lived up to expectations in camp as well. Caleb Hood is a guy that came in as a blue chip player 4 years ago. This is his fifth year, and he's never been able to stay healthy, but he actually
Mhm.
has stayed healthy through an entire camp, and he's looked to be in the best form of his life. So, and then you get to Charleston French and Demon June, both of whom have, June being a freshman, but a guy that they really like. French is another guy that has showed out well. They've got five backs on that roster that can be, ACC level players. The thing
Mhm.
is, you only have really one ball. So, if you're going to be super deep, if I were choosing to be super deep, running back would not be the number one position that I would choose. And in certain places, I think they're pretty dang thin. And word coming from camp on some of that, and just in general, the feeling coming into the season is they're a couple bodies short on the defensive interior of what they ideally would like to be. They don't have a difference maker inside. It doesn't appear. We'll find out. I mean, one of the things talking to one insider, one person who's been in practice and seeing all this stuff, has watched all the scrimmages and all that. I asked him, what's going on the line of scrimmage? What do things look like? And his response is, we don't really know. It's hard to tell because we've only played ourselves. And so when the offensive line gets a few wins, you immediately start asking yourself, like, is that because the defensive line's just not handling their, like, is that because our defensive line isn't any good? And then when the defensive line gets a bunch of stuff, so you're going, is this offensive line not up to snuff? And they don't know because this is a completely revamped roster. And on the offensive line, it looks like they're going to have, in the opener, one starter back from last year. Defensive line has 0.
Yeah.
So you just don't know how good you're going to be at either spot, because normally you can kind of look at it and be like, well, defensive tackles were returning. We know how good they are from last year, and here's what the offensive line's doing to them. So we kind of know where we are in the interior. But they got none of that. They don't know. So like I said, I think there's some depth issues there. Offensive line depth is already being tested. Their top 2 centers went down in camp. The word is that Christo Kelly, who is one of those 2 centers, he's really the number 2 center coming in, and Austin Blasky is their number 1 offensive lineman in general. He was the projected starting center, but the question was whether or not he actually would end up being a guard if he was better at guard, if the combination of him and Kelly was going to be better than the combination of him and the next best guard. Blasky was a guy that was going to play somewhere on the offensive line. I mean, he could have even played tackle. He went down. He's out for up until at least the Clemson game. That's probably the earliest time that he could come back. If it's me and I'm Bill Belichick, I wait another week after Clemson. You're not beating that Clemson team, I don't think.
Right.
But you can beat everybody else on your schedule if you're on the healthier side. So, take the percentage play there. That's just my take. But their depth is being tested there, but they did bring in a bunch of bodies in the portal on the offensive line. So depth is probably not the biggest problem on the offensive line. The real question is quality. And, and also whether a couple of these guys, you get a Ja'Kai Moore, who right now I think is the projected right tackle. He's transferred from South Carolina, where 2 out of the last 3 years he had season-ending injuries, and the other of those 3 years he was banged up most of the year. So he's a guy that hasn't stayed healthy. If he's healthy, if he is really in the form that he's been in at different points in his career, he can be an above-average ACC right tackle. But again, you've got questions about that, and at the tackle position, they've got some depth, but some of the depth that they've had has struggled at times. So that's kind of where the team is in a lot of respects. I do think they've got, the strongest areas on the team are their corners, and I really like their wide receiving room. I think they've got a couple guys in Jordan Shipp and actually Chris Culliver, if he can learn how to play with effort. Isaiah Johnson, the Michigan State transfer. They've got some guys that I think can actually be good players and can stretch the field and be some difficult matchups for a lot of the secondaries in the ACC. That's if if all the other pieces come out. I think they've got good players there, and I think the corner position is a place where their starting 2 corners are, I think, a top 2 or 3 set in the conference. So they do have some skill on this team. The question that it's really going to come down to is how well they're going to handle things in the trenches, especially on the defensive side.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, offensively, it looks like they're going to run an up-tempo spread type offense, which is kind of surprising to me because Bill Belichick is normally ground and pound and dink and doink, and And then
Up,
on the
well,
defense,
let's be careful. Up tempo
but
spread doesn't mean you're not ground and pounding.
okay, not really. I don't know. I never know what to expect out of Bill Belichick when it comes to
So
his
here's the
coach.
thing. I mean, you go back to 2000.
Go ahead.
Go back to 2007 when they had Randy Moss, and
Right.
you had Brady throwing 50 touchdowns. Uh, Belichick. The one thing that you know about Belichick and the way he always has handled things is he's going to try to craft the scheme to what he thinks his personnel is best at. His general view of coaching is don't ask guys to do what they suck at. Ask, put your guys in position to do the one or two things they do well. And if there's stuff they
Right.
don't do well, don't ask them to do those things if at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, here's the thing. I've long thought that there's space in college football for a team to really go super big and get really aggressive with a physical running game and pair that with the hurry up tempo no huddle type thing. Teams that have wanted to do that have had some success. I mean, I'm thinking actually of the Gus Malzahn Auburn teams, for example. Those were run first teams that went super fast. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was something close to that, maybe a little bit less motion and some of the Wildcat influence stuff that you get from Malzahn, who of course is the innovator of the Wildcat.
Right.
But that kind of speed, but essentially they're gonna hurry up, no huddle, to run inside zone, power, and counter. I think that's what we're gonna see.
Okay. Defensively wise, it'll be interesting because what am I seeing here? 9 out of the 11 starters are transfers.
Yep. That's correct. And of the other two, one of them is splitting time. So you're really looking at 9.5 new starters.
Bill Belichick has always gotten the most out of his defenses. So it'll be interesting to see on the defensive side of the ball what they can do. So let's go to the schedule. Obviously, they're going to open up with TCU. That's Monday, correct? Yeah, because that's Labor Day.
Yep, it's Labor Day.
Interesting game. Look, TCU's been down since they made the college football playoff appearance. Hey, who knows? They can play them tough or even win that game. That'd be fantastic. And they're at Charlotte. They should win that one. They're home against Richmond. They should win that one. Look, UCF isn't what they once were. They'll be.
It is on the
better.
road.
Yeah, it'll be better. They'll be better, but
I'm not sure they'll be better than they were last year. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces, and they lost some players from last year that were really important. I mean, you look at Hunter going to Texas Tech. Guard Adrian Medley going to Florida State. Their tight end Pittman going to Florida State following their offensive coordinator. There were a lot of pieces. Some of their best players, some of their most physical players moving on. That's going to be something to observe there and kind of keep a monitor on. I don't know that they're going to be as good as they were last year, and I'm not sure they were all that great last year. But again, there's a lot of moving pieces because they've got a ton of transfers and Scott Frost returning back to UCF. So
yeah, they got the bye, and then the Clemson game.
Yep, and then another bye after the Clemson game
at Cal, who.
Cal's a bad football team, but they
are.
One of the dangers there is that that's a 10:30 game on a Friday night.
Right. Which would be 1:30 a.m. for North Carolina.
Right. Well, it's 10:30 p.m. in Eastern time, so it's a 7:30.
Okay.
Yeah. So these players will be playing at 1:30 their time when that game finishes.
Right.
It'll be almost 2:00 in the morning before that game finishes for those players. And this is why Pac-12 After Dark is a dangerous place for East Coast teams. Because, I mean, some of these guys are pretty used to being up at 1 and 2 in the morning and being very active, but not that kind of active, right? So, you know, you're gonna have to get into a little bit of a different circadian rhythm for that game, and so that's a bit of a trap. But it's coming out of a bye, so you feel better
Yeah.
about that they'll have some chance to acclimate to that. But then that also makes the next game, the home game against Virginia, after that makes that a little bit interesting because they're going to be transitioning from that West Coast swing, that West Coast trip, to the Pac-12 after dark, the wild wild west, to then return to the East Coast and then have a rivalry game against Virginia. That also is going to be, it's tough on your body. I mean, anybody who's traveled coast to coast knows how that works. So
Well, let's face it though, Virginia's not a good football team.
Virginia's a bad football team. And,
Yeah.
I said earlier this year, I think Tony Elliott probably gets fired this season.
Fired.
And,
Okay.
it's, Tony Elliott's a good guy. He kind of walked into a tough situation at Virginia, but I don't think this is a very good Virginia team. I think he probably gets fired. The real question, though, is Virginia did go and get a very good transfer quarterback moving up from FCS with Chandler. And, the wild card there is if Chandler suddenly, balls out, all of a sudden, great quarterback play can take a bad team and make them pretty good. So, that's the real question. I don't think Virginia is very good, but if you've got a quarterback who can catch fire, you have to at least keep that in mind. But I don't think that's going to be the problem for Carolina this year. I don't think Virginia is going to be able to line up and run it down their throats, and I think Carolina's pass defense will be their defensive strength this year.
A friend of the show, Paul Spencer, said, "Don't count Cal out on the West Coast. It's called the Wild Wild West for a reason." I don't care, Paul. Cal stinks. North Carolina should be a lot better by then. I just think North Carolina win that game. They beat Virginia. Now at Syracuse is going to be tough because Cuse is coming off a fantastic season. It's late in the year at Cuse. Then the homecoming game against Stanford. Stanford stinks. At Wake Forest,
football team.
every time North Carolina and Wake Forest get together, no matter what the records are, it's weird things happen when Wake Forest and North Carolina get together. It's always like it's either like 17-10, 17, or it's the 55 to 50.
62 to 58. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is not Dave Clawson's Wake Forest team either. I mean, this is a Wake Forest in transition, and it's a bad roster. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a game where, all things being equal, you kind of expect, as long as North Carolina hasn't had a massive rash of injuries, they should be favored in that game.
Home against Duke. Manny Diaz doing some decent things at Duke, so that's going to be
Duke's going to be a good team this year. I think Duke finishes in the top half of the ACC, even though their schedule's tougher than Carolina's.
And then the last game, the rivalry, North Carolina at North Carolina State. Look, I say year in and year out, I'm always waiting for North Carolina State to take the next step program-wise. They just never do. Again, it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen, but NC State, it's like I'm always waiting, Doc, for them to take the next step program-wise, where they're 9-3 or 10-2, and they put together some. But they always seem to stumble.
Well, I mean, is it really a stumble, though, when they're losing to teams that are better than them?
Like I said, though, I'm always waiting for them to and they never do.
The problem that NC State has had, and the problem that they really have coming into this year, is if you're going to take that next step forward, you need a combination of things. You need either an Indiana-level soft schedule like what Indiana had last year, which can help you, or you are, or I would say, you need a roster that's significantly enough better than the teams that you're playing that you are going to be essentially a 14 to 17 point favorite in at least 10 of your games. And then the next part is, if this is an or as well, insane turnover luck or close game luck, where you go 6-1 in one score games or something else that's unsustainable like that. That's what you need in order to kind of get to that 10-2, 11-1 kind of territory. And, State has not had a talent edge such that you would expect them to go 10-2, 11-1 or whatever. They're not. They don't have a roster like Clemson has been able to put together. They never have. They haven't had a roster like what Clemson's been able to put together, or what like Florida State had in 2023 or 2022 even. They've not been that. They've been much closer to the rosters at UNC and Duke, where those teams also have been sort of stuck in neutral at that somewhere between 6 and 8 wins. And it's because, as with a lot of the rest of the ACC is not a bad conference. There's a lot of discussion about like, oh, the ACC is terrible compared to, the Big Ten or the SEC or whatever. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. The ACC has had a lot of pretty good programs, but that's the problem. They have a lot of programs that would finish right around the middle of the Big Ten. Maybe above the average in the Big Ten. Big Ten has 30 teams now, in 45 teams or whatever. If the Big Ten has 40 teams, you got a bunch of teams in the ACC that are going to finish better than 20th.
Yeah.
But none of them are going to win it. Maybe Clemson, right? Maybe Florida State in 2023. That's the problem the ACC has had, is the ACC has a bunch of average to slightly better than average, or sometimes pretty good teams, but they've lacked great teams, with some exceptions. When they do have great teams, there's usually one. Right? It's 2013 Florida State, 2014 Florida State, 2016 Clemson, 2018 Clemson, 2023 Florida State. I think 2025 Clemson is probably going to be one of those teams as well. And then you say, okay, well, Clemson's the class of the conference. Who else is going to step up and challenge Clemson? And I look at the conference this year and I'm like, oh, it's probably not them, probably not that. I'm not sure I see one of those. And so Clemson, you look at and you go, that's probably an 11-1 team. Maybe somebody upsets them. But I don't see that with others. And it's not NC State. It's not North Carolina. I don't think it's Florida State with their schedule. They got 4 really tough games on that schedule. So, 8-4 at Florida State this season actually probably isn't bad given their schedule, because they got 4 top 15 programs on their schedule. They'd have to play like a top 15 team to beat one of those teams, I think. So, and that's not out of the question. I wouldn't be surprised to see Florida State go 9-3 or 10-2 this year, given what they're going to do in terms of, they have an identity: stop the run the ball. But still, that schedule is a problem. You got Clemson as the class of the conference. NC State, what are you going to get? Probably another 7-6, maybe 8-4. Things go right, because that's just what they have roster wise. So. And the same thing for North Carolina, but I think North Carolina's schedule is easier than most.
A couple of things here before we close out the show. My buddy Paul Spencer again says peanut butter and jelly time quarterback the Cuse. Look, with the Cuse, I don't think they'll have the same type of year they did last year. I think they take a little bit of step back this year. And he also says Miami offensively was great last year with no defense to contend outside of the ACC.
That's right.
Again, look, I still have to see it out of Miami. When it came crunch time last year, they choked.
They're not well coached in game from the top.
No.
And here's another thing, something we have to really. This will be an interesting thing to monitor as far as the state of Florida goes, and as far as Miami of Florida goes. Miami opens with Notre Dame, and I think that Notre Dame team's better than them. And I think they're a lot better coached than them. I think Freeman is a really good coach. I think they've got a good staff up there. Miami's got some really good. Miami's offensive line coaching is very good. They've got some good coaches down there. Don't get me wrong, but I think Notre Dame's better than them. And if Notre Dame goes in and beats Miami later, Miami 2 weeks later goes to Florida, right?
Yeah.
Or is that at home? I can't remember. I think that's at Florida, isn't it?
Yeah, so they play Notre Dame, then they play Bethune-Cookman.
Right, they'll get a win there.
And they play South Florida. They'll win that one.
Yep.
Although South Florida is going to be better.
They will.
And they play Mike Aders on September 20th. So,
and is that at Florida? I can't remember. Is that at Florida or Miami?
No, it's in Miami.
Okay. So then they play Florida, and Florida's, if Lagway's healthy, Florida
again.
will give them all they can handle. That's going to be a war. What happens if Miami loses 2 of their first 4 against Notre Dame and Florida? We've seen this thing happen before, where Miami comes into the year with good expectations and then disappoints in the first month, or maybe second month, and then what happens after Miami takes those first couple losses? We've seen that movie before. What happens? Miami mails it in. And who's their 5th game after Florida?
Florida State.
That's Florida State. And all of a sudden, you have Florida State. You have Florida State, who's played Sisters of the Poor 2 weeks in a row, and then a bye in there, prepping for Miami for almost a solid month. And you're going to get potentially a loss to Notre Dame, a war against Florida. You lose 2 of those, and then you play Florida State. It's very possible. It's not out of the question that Miami starts the season 2-3. And what happens? They got a bunch of transfers and mercenaries on that program, just like Florida State had last year. And do you believe in Beck as a leader?
Not after what he did to Georgia.
So when things start to go wrong, if they go wrong, I mean, I think Beck can be a pretty good player if things are going right. And Miami comes out and, wins game 1 and things just start rolling. Miami's a dangerous football team. There's a lot of talent there. But if they don't, Miami's got a really big delta between their ceiling and their floor this year, I think, because of the way that schedule opens up. They could be, if they're 5-0, that's a legit playoff contender, or 4-1, that's a legit playoff contender after that first 5 games. And they're probably going to go on and finish, 10-2 or 11-1 if that's the case. But it's totally possible they start 2-3 and then collapse.
Yeah.
That's going to be really interesting to monitor in the state of Florida this year.
Well, there's one team in the ACC, their schedule sets up where they might be able to do something. That's Georgia Tech.
And Georgia Tech's really well coached.
They got Clemson at home, which anything could happen. But other than Clemson, they have to go to Duke, which would be tough. They got Syracuse at home. And then that's the only other team that I mean, they play Georgia at the end of the year, and but that's not an ACC game.
Yep.
So really, their ACC opponents are Clemson, Wake, Virginia Tech, Duke, Syracuse, NC State, Boston College, and Pitt. Look, Pitt had to collapse last year. Boston College really isn't any good. NC State, we just talked about them. Cuse, we just talked about them. Duke, we talked about. Look, it's if they can beat Colorado, get that confidence. Then they play Gardner Webb.
That team could absolutely go 10-2.
Yeah.
And they could be 10-1 going into that Georgia game with a loss to Clemson. And they gave Georgia all they could handle last year. Now, I think they lost a few key players from that team last year. A couple of the receivers that they had, Singleton and those guys were a nightmare to defend last year. And that's going to make that hard. Not having those guys is going to make it more complicated for them. So I think maybe they do take a little bit of a step back from what their peak was last year. But they also had to deal with some quarterback injury and other things last year that cost them. That's going to be an interesting team because they might be, in my view, that might be the number 2 team in the ACC at the end of the year. And so, maybe they're a playoff contender. I mean, the schedule, like you said, sets up. I think on the line of scrimmage, they're going to be pretty good, and they're well coached there. That's a physical football team. So, I'm real curious. I'm really interested to watch Georgia Tech, and to me, they're a fun team to watch just because of how they scheme. I think they're a well coached team. They're one of those teams where get that all 22 and take a look at what they do because they've always got some nice stuff on there.
2 more things, and then I'm going to end the show. My man Paul, who's like as big a college football fan as I am. Cristobal's not the answer. Miami game adjustment still questionable. He's a Notre Dame guy. That's why he's saying all that. And then last, what's your take on Bryce Underwood at Michigan high school? Saying does it pan out in the Big 45 football division? Look, there's a lot of freshmen that are going to be starting quarterbacks this year. And look, if they're good enough to start and they've earned it, let's see what they can do. Not saying it's going to pan out that way. Not saying Michigan's going to win the Big Ten. Uh,
which
but
they're
look,
not. Michigan's not going
no,
to win the
I
Big
mean,
Ten.
no, especially with look, if he performs fantastic, it's a fantastic decision. Do I think if Michigan finishes maybe if they finish 9-3 this year, I would consider that a
That's a good
successful year.
year. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think you're starting Bryce Underwood this year knowing that Michigan lost a ton on the line of scrimmage last year,
yeah,
and they lost some
yeah,
from the year before. And I don't think they've
yeah.
fully replaced what they've lost on the line of scrimmage the last 2 years. This is going to be a good Michigan team, but it's not going to be on the line of scrimmage what they've had. And they're reloading a little bit. But look out for the 2026 Michigan team. If Underwood's able to get a healthy year under his belt, and then they're able to mature a little bit on the offensive and defensive lines and get and add some of the pieces that they need there through the portal, add a couple supplementary pieces. That 26 Michigan team is going to be really good and really dangerous. But I see this team as probably closer to third or fourth, maybe fourth in the Big Ten kind of area where they wind up finishing. And then, of course, very competitive and very physical with Ohio State at the end of the year. You can't factor them out there just because of the way that they like to play. But
Hmm.
to me, the hard part for Bryce Underwood is going to be that second game. I mean, I think he's going to be just fine in that opener against New Mexico. He's going to go out there, maybe make a couple little mistakes, but nothing really major, and have a good, nice, solid opening. But playing at Oklahoma and Brent Venables in game 2, that's going to be rough. I think that Oklahoma team is going to be really good this year.
Still have to see it out of Venable's team, though. I have to see it out of that program because they have not exceeded what the expectation was from Brett
They
Venables.
haven't, but that's mostly been on the offensive side. And I think they went and they added a good offensive coordinator and they added a quarterback, and they've not had a quarterback there since Venables has been there. And
Mm-hmm.
you add that quarterback there, and all of a sudden they change. That becomes a dangerous team offensively. And last year, especially toward the end of the season, that OU defense was one of the best in the country. Go look at the clinic tape that OU put up against Michigan, or against not against Michigan, but against Alabama late in the
Right.
year, where they
Mm-hmm.
absolutely destroyed that Alabama offense. And you go, okay, well that's where the ceiling is for that Venables type defense. That man has not forgotten how to coach defense. And they brought back a loaded defensive roster. You add the quarterback that they added. You add Jaden Ott, who is the one really good player on the offense at Cal last year, and he got hurt last year a little bit, but he's a top 100 player in the NFL draft, I think, and he's top 5 maybe running back in the country. You add him, you add the quarterback, you add the different offensive scheme, which I think is innovative and pretty good. That's a dangerous football team. I think they're top 4 in the SEC this year.
Who's your
And I
national
think they beat
champion?
and I think they beat Michigan in that game.
Who's your
Who's
national
my national
champion?
title? So I if I had to guess today, and some of this has to do with thinking about who in who has the paths of least resistance to get good seeds by the end of the season. My national title game, if I was going to choose it today, would be Clemson versus Notre Dame.
Oh wow. Okay.
The question for me is whether Notre Dame, quarterback wise, is going to be able to replace what they got last year from Riley Leonard. But I think defensively, they're going to be really good as they have been. They're really physical. They're well coached. I think they've got some nice pieces to be able to run the football. I like how their schedule sets up. And I think that Clemson defensive line is absolutely nasty. And they're going to have, they finally have something that they haven't had in a while at Clemson, and that's a number 1 receiver, and they might have 2 number 1s. And then they've got a quality quarterback to go with that. And you combine that with that defensive line with, some of those other things. And I think a fairly soft schedule on the whole after that opener. I mean, they've got to beat LSU, but
Yeah.
if they get past LSU, I think they then at that point, once they've beaten LSU, they have the luxury of basically a mulligan from that point forward. And they're going to be in the playoff and probably with a good seed in the playoff. And at that point, I like that defensive line. That defensive line travels, and I think the experience at quarterback helps, and they've got some quality there. So I would say Notre Dame and Clemson for the national title. If I had to choose today, gun to my head, I'd go with Clemson.
Yeah, I had Penn State playing Texas in the national title game. I have Texas winning it all. I just think they're
You're,
ultra talented. Paul,
they
here,
have they have tons
go
of
ahead.
talent. I'm gonna have to see it from Arch Manning before I'm really on board there.
Paul chimed in with a couple. Paul, I got to get out of here, but future for Michigan is good. Top quarterback and top running back Savion Hitter and the top 5 class overall. John
I always
Mateer,
misread that
quarterback
as
at Homa.
Savion Hitler.
You know where they play? They play in Germany.
Yeah,
So, um, John Mateer, quarterback at Oklahoma, should be good. Again, Paul, I still have to see it out of Oklahoma, even though Doc thinks that they're going to be really good. Notre Dame, CJ Carr, true redshirt freshman quarterback, will lean on Love and Price. Yeah, I mean, Marcus Freeman's already said that just don't make mistakes. We're going to pound the rock. We're going to play solid defense and see what happens. And CJ Carr just don't make the big mistakes. So again, the schedule, Notre Dame's going to be in the playoff. Um, Barring, look, don't be losing in Northern Illinois, where you have to win out the rest of the year. I don't think that'll happen this year. I think they've learned their lesson. But look, there's a lot of freshmen starting quarterbacks, and again with NIL and the transfer portal, Doc. Look, no roster is going to be the same from year to year. You're gonna have guys bolting, so you never know what you're going to get. Just like you talked about Clemson again. I still need to see it out of Klubnik, and I still need to see it uh, totality as a whole with Clemson. I think the talent is there, but again, can they put all the pieces together this year? They got they got hammered by Texas last year in the playoff game,
yep.
and I think Dabo learned a valuable lesson there. He's willing to go through the transfer portal a little more. Again, Clemson fans want to see if they get past LSU, they could very well run the table.
They
The,
might,
the,
but the thing is, if they get past LSU, they won't have to.
they'd
They'll
still
be
have
in the
to win the
playoff even
ACC.
if they don't. I don't think they. If Clemson beats LSU, I don't think they have to win the ACC to get into the playoff.
I don't
They
think
could get into the
SMU is going
playoff
to
with one
champ.
loss and losing in the ACC title game. They get in.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Doc, thanks for coming on. He was on a hell of a lot longer than I thought he was going to be. It's always appreciated. I know team beat writers, they are busy, busy, busy at this time of the year. Doc, thanks for coming on, my friend.
Always good. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Enjoy the
Yep.
season.
Yep. You too.
Doc Staples. Um, Paul, 2 games, Miami and A&M are games for Notre Dame. Yes, Paul, that will make or break their season. Uh, I think earlier in the summer, I went down games that would make or break uh, team schedules for the year. Again, Clemson playing LSU. Clemson is the favorite to win the ACC. I don't think North Carolina is going to be a bad football team. Am I saying they're going to make the college football playoff? No, but I think they can make a bowl game in Belichick's first year. And you talk about Clemson. If Clemson gets past LSU, and that's a big if. Um, Looking at the remainder of their schedule, I think they can run the table the rest of the way. They just can't afford to trip up. Remember the Pitt game last year when Pitt had them on the ropes, and then Clemson came back to win, and that started Pitt's slide. So we will see. Again, thanks to him for coming on. It's already 9:15. I normally do this show till 9 o'clock, but it's always great. And once the questions start coming in and once you start picking people's brains, I could talk about this shit for hours. So, again, I want to thank everybody that tunes in. Thanks, Paul, for the questions, for tuning in. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell your representatives, tell your congressmen. Again, before I forget, Lee Corso, he will be making his final headgear pick this Saturday at the Ohio State Texas game. Lee Corso has been on College Game Day for this will be his 39th year, I believe. He's basically been on College Game Day since I was a sophomore in college. So that, I mean, I'll be 57 on Friday, by the way. He's meant so much to the game of college football. He's meant so much to college fans everywhere. I started watching college football at a very young age. I fell in love with college football at a very young age. It's basically overtaken pro football as my favorite sport ever. It's been like that for a long time. The pageantry of it, the rivalries, the atmospheres, there's nothing like it. I know people will say March Madness is fantastic. It is. But college football in the fall, there's nothing like it. He has been the face of college football for decades now. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, up until he retired, Keith Jackson was the voice of college football. There'll never be another Keith Jackson. He was a one-on-one. There'll never be another Lee Corso. He is the face of college football. Nobody will really ever be able to take that mantle away. What he's meant to me, it's been absolutely fantastic for almost 30 years. His headgear picks, that's what everybody tunes into College Game Day for. The X's, the O's, and look, he's cussed on air. What you get with Lee Corso is authentic. It's real. That's what you get. And he is the same off camera as he is on. I've heard that from tens and tens upon tens of people. He has just been a fantastic ambassador for the game of football. And he's meant so much to me over the years. It's going to be sad to see him go. 90 years old, still kicking. He had the stroke. He came back. He's a little bit slower, but the passion is still there, man. The passion is still there. Unfortunately, Father Time is undefeated. When it's time to hang him up, it's time to hang him up. And again, the mind is still there. The passion for college football is there. Unfortunately, the body eventually takes over at some point. And Lee, Coach, Corso, thank you for all you've done. It's been an amazing ride, an amazing journey. Saturdays will never be the same without you making the head picks. And look, it has inspired me throughout the college football season to do what I call week to week. I pick every game. A segment I call You Get the Finger. Lee, in honor of you, to pick the Texas-Ohio State game. Texas this week beats Ohio State. Texas, you get the finger, but Lee, you also get the finger, my friend. Enjoy your retirement. Thank you so much. We'll forever be grateful to the contributions you've made to college football. On that note, I'm out. I will see everybody tomorrow on another edition of Early Evening Sports Buffet at 7 o'clock. Have a good night, everybody.